Hello, everyone. This is a video to supplement the lecture that was not recorded from yesterday, which was September 3rd. So I'm going to go over what we did in in that lecture to give you an idea if you missed it. So again, if you were in the lecture, if you were doing the formal analysis, you don't have to watch it and you don't have to do anything. Okay, it's only if you could not get in or for some reason missed it. So I'm going to go fairly quickly. What I want to do is to look at the PowerPoint, which is super short, and kind of quickly go over things that we've done in class. So I started by talking about the idea of representation, and I was kind of pulling the most important thing from the PowerPoint longer PowerPoint that I asked you to go over in class and that is posted on Canvas. And I said that the main idea that I want you to take from that PowerPoint is the idea of representation, that the visual culture is always a representation of something we represent. And for the first few weeks that we're going to work on our course, we're mainly going to look at photography or portraiture, something that is fairly naturalistic. So when we talk about naturalistic representation or representation in general, we know where kind of the indexical quality of that, where there's a representation that was borrowed from. So for example, if you do a selfie and send it to your friend knows that the origin of that selfie is you. So things like that. But at the same time, what I ask you to look at images by Magritte and kind of reflect on them, because the representation of Magritte is really emblematic of the danger that is associated with thinking about, oh, image representation, object representation, they are all the same. They're not. And the pipe, the representation of the pipe, this is not a pipe, the treacherous images kind of shows us that. That's why I have here in this PowerPoint the idea of representation as representing something, and then representation in kind of in brackets, because every presentation, every representation has a presentation, an original object attached to them. Okay, so we kind of looked at that. And then we also, as a class, started talking about cross mediation. And what I asked people who were in class is to open their chat and just write what they understood from what cross mediation was, and give me an example. And about half of people were kind of iffy about that, but slowly we gotten into it, and essentially we figured it out. And that was my way of kind of checking if people understood and read what I asked them. So that cross mediation is essentially using the same material in different media. So I gave an example of Trump's tweets. He tweets, then media picks it up, then Fox News picks it up, then someone else on Facebook picks it up, etc. TV, so between TV and social media and various stations, that is called cross mediation. Disney is a great example of cross mediation. You know, think about Star Wars. They bought the franchise. They did the films. They're doing the shows. They have a lot of different merchandise associated with that, etc., etc. So that's cross mediation. Okay, and then we turn to formal analysis. And the reason I want you to do, and I'm kind of like quite pedantic about that, is because I really want to make sure that you understand how to read the images. So I've got here a portrait or an artwork, I should say, called Hope by Claire Laxton. She's a younger British photographer and artist. And this work is in a collection, just in a private collection. So I thought that it would be, because it's such a striking photograph, and to be honest, I really like it myself. I thought it would be a really good example of, for us to go over and kind of look at the categories that potentially could apply. Okay, so we know that it's a photograph. So the medium means material. This is material. Here would be photo paper. The technique, how did we achieve what we achieved? That would be photography. The photography is the technique that was used. And then I started by talking about colors, and we talked about colors because colors probably is the colors, textures, kind of focus, space are more important here than say line or shape or form. So your kind of what you have to think about in this regard is that not every image would have every single category that applies to it. So here we spend quite a bit of time thinking about color. And what we've noticed is that, first of all, the overall kind of main colors that are present here, kind of yellowish, mustardy, earthy tones. We've got the Band-Aid, we've got her skin that is kind of, has this kind of faint freckles, the greenish yellowish eye, and the same in the flowers, kind of the greenish that picks up the little bit of yellowish, a little bit of white. So there are a couple of things that kind of stand out, green being one of them, red being one of them, but overall the tone of it very much the earthy tone. So we're invited to think about earth and garden, etc. The other important part here was texture, because it's an incredibly crisp photograph, and when we look at that, we can kind of feel the texture, and that's the strength of this photograph, like the eyebrows, the eyelashes, the texture of the Band-Aid itself is incredible here. So it's, again, this is something that makes the image the way it is. And the image to me is very impactful and very beautiful. And we talked also about the fact that if this image is present, and look at the screen here, I have other things going on, but I keep going back because it's a human eye, and we're all conditioned to pay more attention to human eye than anything else. So it constantly kind of brings me into the screen, kind of asks for my attention again and again. The next thing that we did, we looked at space and what do we have in terms of space. And as you can see, this is a photograph. This is not a detail. This is how a photograph looks like, and the size is around 2 by 3 feet. And we talked about the fact that there is no real space here. All of it is her face. So there's no kind of empty space or frame of any kind that would actually frame us and focus us onto her face. We talked a little bit about balance and the fact that the composition here is very centered to it's really kind of, again, because we don't have any empty space, we're dragged into the middle, we are watching the middle. So if you were to analyze this work, that's kind of where you would go for. You could potentially also talk about contrast, and source of light, where if you look at the kind of bottom left part of the image, you will see less light and less precision, less focus. You can look at proportions as well. See there, they seem to be very realistic and very, the flowers are tiny, but they seem to be realistic. They don't seem jarring or kind of out of place. Okay, so we did that, and then we went and looked at The Treachery of Images from 1929 by René Magritte that you had in your PowerPoint. And you also learned from that mini lecture a little bit about Magritte and kind of how he thinks about representation. And again, we kind of thought about this image and what makes it different from the previous one. And it's an oil on canvas, so so canvas would be the medium. The technique would be painting, and then we thought about line. Here, line is very important because it delineates the object really well. The form, the space, there's the space here is completely different. We talked about Magritte being an illustrator. He worked as an illustrator for a fashion house. So he's as a fashion illustrator, I should say. So he's very familiar with that kind of style, a very crisp, realistic, three-dimensional style of illustrations, a little decorative, and that's exactly what he does here. He creates very neutral background for us with a lot of space around the pipe, and then we can see the pipe really clearly. And then we also talked about composition here, or balance, and the fact that more or less the pipe is centered. The composition is something that you kind of the balance of the composition is you check. You either put kind of in your head, you put a vertical line or horizontal line in the middle and kind of see if there is enough things going on either side. And here, more or less, it's not science, it's humanity. So more or less the same happens on either side. So the composition is balanced, and we can see kind of there's overall nothing is jarring. And we will see images where things are on purpose done in a very different way. So René Magritte here wants us to think. He doesn't want us to appreciate his interest or his mastery of representation or his originality of the work. He wants us to look at this pipe and say, well, this is a pipe, really. So why is he saying it's not a pipe, and kind of look into that. So that's that. Once we did this, I asked everyone to go into a breakout room, choose one image from the PowerPoint, and if you hold on, I will try right now. I'm not sharing my screen anymore. I will reshare it in a second. Okay, so I'm sharing the screen again. This is our class on Canvas. This is our week 1 module. This is the file that everyone needs to use to do the formal analysis. So you open this file. You download it, and then you fill it out. You use one of the images, I'll show you what, and you fill out as much as you can. You don't have to do everything. You just have to kind of think about what applies here and what does not apply. Okay, so this is what you do. You get the images, you get from here. It's a large file, so it's going to download for a bit. There we go. Okay, so any image from here is good. At the bottom here, I have more of Magritte, etc., more art. At the top, there are more documentary photography, but any image here is good one. So once you chose the image, you filled out that formal analysis worksheet. What you do then is you go back and you submit this into formal analysis. That's the assignment. That's what it looks like to me. It probably will look slightly different to you because I'm looking at it from a professor's kind of side of the software, I should say. And you just attach the file and you submit it. There are 10 people already submitted. It's due on Thursday next week. So on Tuesday, I will give you some more time to work on that in class, like about 15 minutes of class time at the beginning. We'll still be doing that. But in order to do a decent formal analysis, you probably need like half an hour to 40 minutes. 15 minutes is not enough. So that's all I've got for you for this time. Hopefully I will not mess up the Zoom meeting on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you then.